Welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. Let me ask you a question. Are inventions real? There are some who would say yes. Okay, but are the people that created those inventions real? Okay, you know what? Obviously, yes. Let me rephrase that. Are the creations by the creators that created the inventions real? You know what? Let me start over. Today, I'm going to talk to you about real-life inventions that came from comic book creators. So, yeah, I think I've made that clear. Without any further ado, let's dive in. Ankle monitors. Spider-Man has used his spider tracers to track down criminals ever since 1964's Amazing Spider-Man number 11 by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. He created the device to emit a signal that triggers his spider sense. He also used it to chase a hamburger in an issue of Spidey Super Stories. But his enemy, Kingpin, used a similar tracer in an issue of the Spider-Man newspaper strip from August of 1977. In that comic strip by Stan Lee and John Romita Sr., Kingpin clamps an electronic device on Spider-Man that will track his movements. Cut to New Mexico Judge Jack Love, who read the strip and decided to use the technology for that exact reason. Love started a company that created the ankle monitor to track criminals who were on probation or under house arrest. They were adopted in New Mexico by authorities in 1983 and became widespread nationwide following that. Love even credited this Spider-Man comic strip in interviews. How Stan Lee never claimed a piece of that action is a mystery that I cannot answer. But in a very real way, Spider-Man led to criminals being watched. And yeah, maybe that's not as exciting as, say, stopping a bank robber. You know, we're stopping a guy who has a DUI from going to a bar. That's not that exciting, but it's still more crime than was stopped by Superman, that fraud. Recovering sunken ships. In 1964, a freighter capsized off the coast of Kuwait. Unfortunately, it was full of 5,000 sheep, and their rotting bodies were at risk of infecting Kuwait's drinking water. The ship needed to be raised, but it was prohibitively expensive, and insurance was about to write everything off for $2 million. But a solution was devised to raise the ship by a Danish inventor named Carl Kreuer. Not a supervillain, despite that name. Carl Kreuer inserted a tube into the sunken freighter and pumped in small buoyant balls, over 27 million of them. The combined buoyancy raised the ship intact, and it only cost about $350,000. With the mission a success, Kreuer applied for a patent on his system, which the Dutch government then rejected because it had already been invented over 15 years earlier in a comic book. In 1949's issue 104 of Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, Carl Barks wrote and illustrated a 10-page story called The Sunken Yacht. Wealthy Scrooge McDuck's yacht had sunk, and Donald Duck and his nephews went to retrieve it. The nephews came up with the idea of pumping the yacht full of ping-pong balls. It successfully raised the ship. Again, we have a mystery here, because who in the Dutch patent office was such a big fan of Donald Duck that they could remember a comic strip from 15, actually 16 years ago and say, no, that invention was already created? That's a little bit of a mystery. But the invention actually did work, and in 2004, that show Mythbusters actually tested it. Again, great success. So, Carl Barks was actually a tremendous forward thinker. He created other things in his Donald Duck comics that came to be real. There was an issue of the comic where Donald Duck gets hit on the head, and he actually comes up with a process for isolating methylene gas, which scientists about 2 decades later were able to replicate and gave credit to Carl Barks. Pretty crazy stuff. A story for another day. Let's keep going. Chess boxing. A few weeks ago, YouTuber Ludwig put on an influencer fight, a series of chess boxing matches. Chess boxing is just what it sounds like. Two opponents playing alternating rounds of chess and boxing, where you can win by knockout or checkmate, or decision or time penalty. These events have been taking place since 2003 under the auspices of the World Chess Boxing Organization. But the first place to feature chess boxing was a comic book. In 1992, French comic book creator Enki Bilal released the third part of his Nikopol trilogy, The Cold Equator. It extensively features chess boxing. Dutch performance artist Ipe Rubing was inspired by the comic to put on an event and founded the World Chess Boxing Organization. So if anyone out there is putting on an influencer event and wants a really old guy to play some chess boxing, well, I'm up for it. Now I gotta admit, my chess, kinda shitty. But on the other hand, my boxing is also pretty crappy. But my innovation is whenever you win a chess piece from your opponent, you get to hold it and hit your opponent with it. Early predictions. Sometimes comic books predicted future technology. These weren't explicitly used as inspiration, but Batman was using drone technology back in 1957's Batman issue 109. Dick Tracy had a two-way radio in his watch from 1931, and it added video in 1964. And in 1997, Transmetropolitan featured protagonist Spider Jerusalem reporting on a riot in real time, which predated people being able to live tweet news on Twitter, which was launched in 2006. The lie detector test. One of the most famous inventions by a comic book creator is an early version of the lie detector test by William Moulton Marston. Marston was a psychologist who created the systolic blood pressure test, which was ultimately a key component in the modern polygraph. He noted that when people were upset, their blood pressure would rise, and devised this invention to help suss out when people are lying. Marston was obsessed with the idea of truth because it also factored heavily into his other creation, Wonder Woman. Marston saw the value in using comic books to educate the youth and pitched the idea for Wonder Woman to national periodical publications after they hired Marston as an educational consultant. Wonder Woman debuted in issue 8 of All-Star Comics from December of 1941. One of her key pieces of equipment was her lasso of truth, which compelled anyone bound by her rope to tell the truth. Was Wonder Woman cool? Yes. Is my YouTube show cool? Yes. Have I done crack cocaine every day of my life since age 20? Yes. Now, are you going to hit the like button and comment down below so that my channel explodes? Yes. Okay, well, I'd still appreciate it if you considered it. Anyway, these are just a few crazy inventions that were created by comic book creators. I always find it interesting to see things from fiction translate into the real world. Like, you know, on Star Trek, they would use those communicators that are basically cell phones. It's just amazing to see early technology envisioned by creative people, and then scientists go like, wait a minute, yeah, we could actually make that. And there's other things too in comic books that I didn't even necessarily touch on that maybe I could in a future episode if you guys like this. Let's see, Alejandro Jodorowsky, famous director, also created a lot of amazing comic books like the Incal and Metabarons. He also created a sort of philosophy called psychomagic. That's a whole can of worms that I won't open right now because, let's face it, none of you need worms for dinner right now. I'll end it there because I'm out of jokes, so this is as good a time as any to wrap it up. I will see you next week with a more traditional Comic Tropes episode focusing on creators and their techniques. But until then, I would like you to keep reading comics, and Happy New Year, everybody! Take care, keep reading comics. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, there are merchandise links beneath the YouTube video, and you can always hit join on YouTube or visit Comic Tropes on Patreon to get access to special perks. In his Donald Duck comics. I stuttered. It's definitely a mystery who in the... Thanks, kitties. You guys mind being quiet so I can record an episode? And boxing, where you can win by kitties, come on. I mean, I'm trying to record here.